I sold your house. You never deserved it anyway. My sister Emily's voice dripped with satisfaction through my phone's speaker. I stood in my hotel room in Singapore, where I'd been working as a medical consultant for the past 3 months, trying to process what I just heard. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and at 35, I never thought I'd be dealing with this level of betrayal from my own family. I'd spent the last decade working multiple jobs, sacrificing everything to put Emily through medical school, and now she was trying to sell my house, the one thing I'd managed to keep for myself. You can't sell what isn't yours to sell, I replied, keeping my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. The laugh that came through the phone was cold, dismissive. Mom and Dad already signed off on it. The buyers are moving in next week. You're never here anyway, always running off to your fancy overseas jobs. The house should go to someone who'll actually use it. I gripped my desk, steadying myself. Emily had no idea that 6 months ago, when she'd started making suspicious comments about my property, I'd taken precautions. The house wasn't just in my name. It was protected by an ironclad trust that required multiple signatures for any sale. Signatures that certainly didn't include my parents or sister. We'll see about that, I said calmly, ending the call before she could respond. My hands shook as I pulled up my laptop, accessing the security cameras I'd installed after my last visit home. The footage showed Emily leading a couple through my house yesterday, gesturing grandly like she owned the place. My parents stood in the background, nodding approvingly. I'd always been the responsible one, the one who sacrificed everything for family. When Emily announced she wanted to go to medical school but couldn't afford it, I stepped up. I was 25 then, working as a pharmaceutical sales rep with a promising career ahead of me. Instead of pursuing my own dreams, I took 2 additional jobs, bartending at night and consulting on weekends. Every penny went to Emily's tuition. You're such a blessing, my mother would say, while simultaneously criticizing my choice to work so much. But you should make more time for family. Emily misses you. Emily missed me so much that she'd skip family dinners I'd arranged, claiming she needed to study. Meanwhile, her Instagram showed her partying with friends. But I kept quiet, kept working, kept paying. Because that's what family does, right? The house had been my one indulgence. After 5 years of nonstop work, I'd saved enough for a down payment on a modest 3-bedroom home in our hometown. Emily had thrown a fit when I bought it. How could you waste money on a house when I still have 2 years of medical school left? She demanded. I thought you were saving that for my tuition. I'd stood my ground then, one of the few times I'd ever refused her anything. The house became my sanctuary, the one place that was truly mine. And now she was trying to take that too. I dialed Laura, my lawyer and oldest friend. She answered on the first ring. Sarah, aren't you in Singapore? Emily's trying to sell my house, I said without preamble. She's already showing it to buyers. Laura's sharp intake of breath was followed by rapid typing. She can't. We made sure of that, remember? The trust requires your signature, witnessed by a notary. Any sale without it is fraud. She forged my signature, I said, pulling up my email. The realtor just sent over the paperwork. It looks like my parents signed as witnesses. Send me everything, Laura said, her voice hardening. I'll contact the realtor immediately and put a stop to this. Do you want to press charges? I thought about Emily, about all the years I'd spent supporting her dreams while putting mine on hold. About my parents, who'd always favored her, who were now actively helping her steal from me. Not yet, I replied. Let's see how they react when they learn about the trust. But Laura, document everything. I'm done being the family doormat. After hanging up, I pulled up more security footage. Emily was back at my house, this time with a moving crew. They were measuring furniture, making notes. My blood boiled as I watched her direct them to tag my grandmother's antique dining set, the only thing I had left from Mom's side of the family. I'd always known Emily was selfish, but this level of entitlement shocked even me. Growing up, she'd been the golden child, the one with big dreams and bigger demands. When she wanted dance lessons, my parents found the money. When she needed a car for college, they took out a loan. But when I earned a full scholarship to business school, their response was lukewarm at best. At least you won't burden us financially, my father had said, as if my achievement was merely a convenience rather than something to celebrate. My phone buzzed with a text from Emily. The buyers love the house. They're offering cash. You should be grateful. Now you can focus on your work without being tied down to property. I clicked over to my home security app, activating the new locks I had installed last month. Another buzz. Why isn't my key working? Stop being difficult, Sarah. This is for the best. I smiled, imagining her frustration. The locks were just the beginning. After years of watching Emily manipulate situations to her advantage, I learned to plan ahead. The trust protecting my house was just one layer of security. There were others: documentation of every penny I'd spent on her education, recordings of conversations where she promised to repay me, emails where she'd acknowledged the house was mine alone. My phone rang again. My mother this time. I let it go to voicemail, then listened as her message played. Sarah, you're being selfish. Your sister needs this house more than you do. She's starting her residency at the local hospital, and you're never even here. Why can't you think about someone besides yourself for once? The irony of her words would have been funny if it wasn't so painful. I'd spent my entire adult life thinking about others, specifically about Emily. I put her through medical school while working myself to exhaustion. I co-signed her student loans, paid her car insurance, and covered her rent when she claimed she was too busy studying to work. And now, just as she was about to start her career, a career I'd sacrificed everything to help her achieve, she was trying to take the one thing I'd kept for myself. Laura called back an hour later. I've contacted the realtor, she said. They're withdrawing the listing immediately. I sent them documentation of the trust and warned them about potential liability for participating in fraud. They're not happy with Emily. How long until she figures it out? Already has. She's been calling my office nonstop. Your parents too. They're threatening legal action, claiming the trust is invalid because they're your legal next of kin. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. They clearly haven't read the trust documents. Did you tell them about the fraud charges they could face? Not yet. I thought you might want to handle that conversation personally. I looked at my calendar. My contract in Singapore had another month left, but suddenly my presence was required at home. Book me a flight, I said. It's time to face this head-on. The next morning, as my plane descended into my hometown airport, I received another flurry of texts from Emily. You're ruining everything. The buyers are threatening to sue us. Mom and Dad put deposits down on a condo for me. We'll lose it if this sale doesn't go through. So that was their plan. Sell my house out from under me to buy Emily a condo. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. Laura was waiting at arrivals, her expression grim. They're at your house, she said as we walked to her car. All three of them. Your father tried to hire a locksmith, but I had the security company send over proof of ownership. The police have been notified in case they try anything else. As we pulled up to my house, I saw them standing in the driveway. Emily in her expensive designer clothes that I probably paid for, my parents looking both angry and defensive. The moving truck was still there, half loaded with my furniture. Ready? Laura asked, squeezing my hand. I nodded, stepping out of the car. Emily started forward, her face twisted with self-righteous anger. How dare you embarrass me like this, she shrieked. The buyers think I'm a fraud. You are a fraud, I replied calmly. You forged my signature, tried to sell property that isn't yours, and attempted to steal my inheritance from Grandma. Would you like me to continue? My father stepped forward, his face red. Now listen here, young lady. We're your parents and we have no legal right to this property, Laura interrupted, pulling out a thick folder. In fact, by signing those fraudulent sale documents, you've opened yourselves up to criminal charges. Shall we discuss those now, or would you prefer to handle this through the proper legal channels? My mother burst into tears, her usual tactic when things didn't go her way. We were just trying to help your sister. She needs a place to live during her residency, and you're never even here. I'm never here because I'm working, I said, my voice steady but sharp. Working to pay off the loans I took out to put Emily through medical school. Working to rebuild my savings after spending everything on her education. Would you like to see those records too? Emily's face paled. She always acted like my financial support was her due, something she was entitled to as the younger sister with bigger dreams. Now, faced with the reality of her actions, she seemed to shrink. I was going to pay you back, she stammered. When? I asked. Before or after you stole my house? Laura stepped forward, handing each of them a document. This is a cease and desist order. You are to remove yourselves from this property immediately. Any further attempts to access or sell this house will result in immediate legal action. You can't do this, Emily protested, but her voice was weak. We're family. I looked at her, really looked at her, my little sister, whom I'd sacrificed so much to support, who had never once shown gratitude, never acknowledged the nights I'd worked double shifts to pay her tuition, never offered to help when I was struggling to make my own mortgage payments. Family doesn't steal from family, I said quietly. Family doesn't forge signatures or try to sell someone's home without permission. Family supports each other, but that support should go both ways. The moving company has 30 minutes to unload my furniture and leave, I continued, checking my watch. After that, I'm calling the police to report theft. Your choice. They left, not gracefully, but they left. Emily threw one last tearful look over her shoulder. But I'd grown immune to her manipulative displays of emotion. My parents wouldn't meet my eyes as they drove away, probably already crafting a narrative that painted me as the villain. As I walked through my house that evening, putting things back in order, I found a photo album I'd forgotten about. Inside were pictures from Emily's medical school graduation, an event I'd had to watch via livestream because I was working a double shift to make her final tuition payment. In every photo, she was beaming, surrounded by our parents' proud smiles. Not one mention of the sister who'd made it all possible, not one acknowledgement of the sacrifices I'd made. I closed the album and poured myself a glass of wine. Tomorrow, I would call my bank and cancel the automatic payments I'd been making on Emily's student loans, payments she probably didn't even know about. Next week, I would meet with Laura to discuss recovering the money I was owed. But tonight, I would sleep in my own bed, in my own house, secure in the knowledge that I finally stood up for myself. My phone buzzed one last time, a text from Emily. I hope you're happy. You've ruined everything. I smiled, typing back, no, Emily, I just started fixing things. Then I turned off my phone, curled up in my favorite reading chair, and began planning my next business trip, this time, not out of necessity, but because I wanted to. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. The morning after the confrontation, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most were from Emily, ranging from tearful apologies to vicious accusations. A few were from my parents, their tone shifting between guilt-tripping and thinly veiled threats. I was sipping my morning coffee, sorting through emails with Laura about the next steps, when someone knocked on my door. Through the security camera, I saw my mother standing there, clutching her designer handbag, the one I'd bought her last Christmas. Sarah, please, she called out, knowing the camera would pick up her voice. We need to talk about this like family. I thought about ignoring her, but maybe it was time to have this conversation. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. Talk about what, Mom? How you helped Emily try to steal my house? Or the forged documents you and Dad signed? She flinched but quickly recovered. You don't understand. Emily's starting her residency. She needs stability. The hospital doesn't pay residents much, and with her student loans. Her student loans? I interrupted, pulling out my phone and opening my banking app. You mean these loans? The ones I've been paying $2,000 a month on for the past 3 years. My mother's face went pale as I showed her the transaction history. I didn't know. Of course you didn't. Just like you didn't know about the credit card bills I paid when she maxed out her cards during med school, or the rent I covered when she decided studying was more important than working. Would you like to see those records too? She sank onto my porch bench, her carefully maintained facade cracking. But why didn't you tell us? Would it have mattered? Every time I tried to talk about money, about how hard I was working, you and Dad shut me down. Emily needs to focus on her studies, remember? Don't burden her with financial stress. My mother had the grace to look ashamed. But I wasn't finished. Do you know what I gave up to put her through medical school? The promotions I turned down because they required travel? The relationship that ended because I was working 3 jobs and never had time to date? We didn't ask you to do all that, she protested weakly. No, you just expected it. And now you expect me to give up my house too, the one thing I kept for myself. She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. Sweetheart, we were just trying to help your sister get started in her career. We thought, since you're so successful, always traveling for work. I travel for work because I have to, Mom. Those overseas consulting jobs, they pay triple my regular salary. How else do you think I've been covering Emily's loans? The silence that followed was heavy with realization. Finally, my mother spoke, her voice small. What do you want us to do? I want you to leave me alone. I want Emily to start paying her own bills. And I want you and Dad to understand that if you ever try something like this again, I won't hesitate to press charges. You'd send your own family to jail? She looked horrified. Family doesn't do what you did. Family doesn't try to steal from each other. Family supports each other, but that support should go both ways. After she left, I called Laura to update her on the conversation. She was already working on documents to transfer Emily's loans back to her name. Your sister's been calling my office, Laura said. She's threatening to sue you for emotional distress, claiming you promised her the house years ago. I couldn't help but laugh. Let her try. I'm sure the judge would love to see the financial records showing exactly who's caused whom emotional distress. That afternoon, I received an email from Emily's hospital. Apparently, she listed my address as her primary residence on her residency application. I forwarded it to Laura, who immediately sent a clarification to the hospital's HR department. My phone buzzed with a text from Emily. Thanks a lot. Now the hospital's asking me for proof of residence. Why are you doing this to me? I thought about responding, about pointing out the irony of her question. Instead, I blocked her number. Years of being the responsible sister, the one who fixed everything, had taken their toll. It was time to focus on my own life. The next day, I met with my financial advisor to review my accounts. Without Emily's loans and expenses dragging me down, I could finally start planning for my own future. You could buy a vacation property, he suggested, showing me some investment opportunities, or start that consulting firm you've talked about. The possibilities made me dizzy. For so long, all my decisions had been filtered through the lens of what does Emily need. Now I could choose based solely on what I wanted. My father tried one last time to fix things, showing up at my office unannounced. The receptionist, warned in advance, called security. Is this really necessary? He demanded as the security guard escorted him out. I'm your father. You stopped being my father the moment you tried to steal my house, I called after him. Send Emily the bill for her loans. I'm done paying them. That evening, as I sat on my back porch watching the sunset, I received an unexpected email from Emily's medical school classmate, Jessica. I hope you don't mind me reaching out, she wrote. I just wanted you to know that we all knew what you did for Emily. She used to brag about how she didn't have to work during med school because her stupid sister would pay for everything. It never sat right with me, especially now that I'm struggling to pay my own loans. You deserve better than how they treated you. I sat there for a long time, reading and rereading Jessica's email. All those years, I told myself I was helping Emily achieve her dreams. But maybe I'd just been enabling her selfishness, teaching her that she could take and take without consequences. Laura called with an update. The realtors filed a complaint against Emily for fraud. They want to make sure she can't try this with any other properties. Good, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. It's time she learned actions have consequences. As I ended the call, I looked around my house, my home. Every piece of furniture, every paint color, every carefully chosen detail represented a choice I'd made for myself. No one was going to take that from me, not even family. Especially not family. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, Emily, using our cousin's phone. Mom and Dad say I have to start paying my own loans. How could you do this to me? I thought you loved me. I deleted the message without responding. Love, I was learning, shouldn't mean sacrificing everything for someone who gives nothing in return. Tomorrow I would head back to Singapore to complete my contract. But this time, I wasn't running away from family drama. I was running toward my own future, one where I finally put myself first. It was about time. 3 months after the house incident, my life had taken a dramatically different turn. Without Emily's expenses draining my accounts, I had been able to invest in my own future. I had accepted a permanent position in Singapore with triple my previous salary and had started exploring opportunities to open my own consulting firm. But family drama has a way of following you, even across oceans. There's something you need to see. Laura's voice was tense during our weekly video call. Emily has started a GoFundMe campaign. She shared her screen and my stomach turned. There was my sister, expertly photographed to look exhausted and desperate, next to a headline that made my blood boil. Abandoned doctor needs help. Sister leaves medical resident homeless and drowning in debt. The story she crafted was a masterpiece of manipulation. According to Emily, I had abandoned her during her crucial residency year, suddenly cutting off support and leaving her to face mountains of unexpected debt. She claimed she had been blindsided by loan payments she didn't know existed, painting herself as a victim of my sudden cruelty. She's raised almost $30,000, Laura said quietly, and she's giving interviews to local news stations. I leaned back in my chair, surprisingly calm. Forward everything to the hospital's HR department and the medical board. I'm sure they'd be interested to know that one of their residents is publicly fundraising under false pretenses. Already done, Laura replied, but there's more. Your parents are backing her story. They're claiming you had a mental breakdown from working too much, that you've become dangerously unstable. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Do they realize I'm currently leading a multi-million-dollar project in Singapore? That my instability just landed me a promotion. They're desperate, Laura said. The bank has started foreclosure proceedings on their house. Apparently, they took out a second mortgage to put a deposit on that condo for Emily. That explained their eagerness to sell my house. They had gambled their own home on Emily's latest demand, confident they could manipulate me into solving their problems yet again. Send them this, I said, forwarding Laura an email from my investment advisor. It's the statement showing how much I've paid toward Emily's education and expenses over the past 7 years. Total it up and add it to their GoFundMe story. Let's see how sympathetic their donors feel when they see the real numbers. The total was staggering. $347,892. Every penny documented, every payment tracked. Years of my life converted into a single damning figure. Within hours of Laura adding this information to Emily's fundraising page, the tide turned. Donors started demanding refunds. Comments flooded in, criticizing Emily's manipulation and entitlement. The local news station that had been planning to run her struggling resident story suddenly became very interested in investigating financial fraud instead. That evening, I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. How could you? Emily's voice was raw with anger. You've ruined everything. The hospital is investigating me, my colleagues won't look me in the eye, and Mom and Dad might lose their house. No, Emily, I said calmly, you ruined everything. You tried to steal my house, forged my signature, and when that didn't work, you tried to publicly shame me. These are the consequences of your actions. I needed help, she cried. What was I supposed to do? Get a job, take responsibility for your loans. Act like the adult you claim to be. I did it, worked multiple jobs through college, built my career, paid my own way. Why can't you? The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Emily spoke, her voice small. I don't know how. For a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy. I had spent so long solving Emily's problems that I had never taught her to solve them herself. Figure it out, I said firmly. You're a doctor now. Start acting like one. After hanging up, I walked out onto my balcony, overlooking the Singapore skyline. The city glittered beneath me, a testament to how far I had come from the exhausted woman working 3 jobs to support her sister's dreams. My phone buzzed with a text from Laura. The hospital has suspended Emily pending an investigation into professional ethics. Your parents are trying to refinance their house. Want me to block their number? No, I replied. Let them face the consequences. It's the only way they'll learn. Looking out at the city lights, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For years, I had carried my family's expectations, their demands, their emergencies. Now finally, I was free to focus on my own dreams. And those dreams were just beginning. 1 year later, I stood in my Singapore apartment, packing the last of my belongings. Not because I was running away, but because I was moving forward. My consulting firm had taken off, with offices opening in both Singapore and London. I had finally found success on my own terms. The last time I had heard from Emily was 6 months ago. After the GoFundMe scandal, she had been placed on probation at the hospital and required to take ethics courses. Our parents had managed to keep their house through a strict refinancing plan, but the experience had changed them. My phone buzzed, an email from my mother. Dear Sarah, I've been thinking a lot about what happened last year, about how we treated you, what we expected from you. I found your old payslips in the attic, from when you were working those extra jobs for Emily's tuition. I never realized, I'm sorry, not just for the house incident, but for everything. for not seeing how much you sacrificed, for not being the mother you deserved. I read the email twice, letting the words sink in. It wasn't the first apology she had sent, but it was the first that felt genuine. Laura called while I was considering my response. Your sister repaid the first installment, she said, sounding surprised. It's not much, but it's something. Emily had agreed to a repayment plan 3 months ago, not for everything I had given her, but for the loans I had covered during her residency. It was a small step, but an important one. How's she doing? I asked, surprising myself by caring about the answer. Better, actually. She's working extra shifts at the hospital to cover her debts. Someone said she's even taken a financial management course. I smiled, remembering Emily's words. I don't know how. Maybe she was finally learning. My father had reached out too, in his own way. He had sent me newspaper clippings about my company's success, with short notes saying, proud of you or well done. No mention of the past, no attempts to ask for help, just quiet acknowledgement of my achievements. As I packed the last box, I found the old photo album from Emily's graduation. Next to it was a more recent photo, me at the opening of my London office, standing proud and independent. The contrast between the two images told the story of my journey. My phone rang again, Emily's number. After a moment's hesitation, I answered. Sarah? Her voice was different, more mature, less entitled. I heard about your company's expansion. Congratulations. Thank you, I said cautiously. I've been thinking. I know I can never repay everything you did for me, not just the money, but the years you gave up. I didn't appreciate it then. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I understand now. I sat down, holding the phone tighter. What changed? I've been mentoring a medical student, she said. She's working 2 jobs to put herself through school. Every time I see how tired she is, how hard she works, I think about you, about what you did for me, about how I wasted your sacrifices. For the first time in years, I heard real remorse in her voice. Learn from it, I said simply. Be better. I'm trying, she replied. That's actually why I called. I'd like to increase my monthly repayments. I picked up some extra shifts in the ER. After we hung up, I looked around my half-packed apartment. Tomorrow, I would fly to London to oversee the new office. My life had expanded beyond the boundaries of family obligation, beyond the role of the responsible sister who fixed everything. My mother's email still waited for a response. Finally, I typed, Mom, thank you for your apology. I needed to hear it. I'm opening a new office in London next month. If you and Dad would like to visit, we could talk more in person. No expectations, no demands, just conversation. Love, Sarah. As I pressed send, I felt the last pieces of resentment begin to fade. My family had taken so much from me, but they had also taught me an invaluable lesson. True strength comes not from carrying others' burdens, but from knowing when to set them down. In my new office in London, I would hang 2 photos side by side. The old one of me working multiple jobs to support Emily, and a new one of me cutting the ribbon at my company's opening. Not as a reminder of what I had lost, but as a testament to what I had gained. Independence, self-respect, and the courage to put myself first. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting better.